Hey, welcome to the new Bluejay Banter podcast here on our on the Bluejay Banter YouTube channel. I'm Tim Kruger along with Ross Ferrarini and our producer Zach Weaver. How you doing, guys?
Doing all right. Not too bad.
Good.
Ross,
All good.
you been
Can't
playing a lot of
complain.
golf, Ross?
I have been. I've been probably playing too much golf. I'm almost golfed out, but we got a couple more weeks. We got a big tournament that you and I are going to play in
Ah,
for Creighton baseball and Chris Gradiville, and
yeah, absolutely. That's going to be a blast. So
that'll be a
looking forward to
very
that.
fun. That'll be a very fun Saturday.
I don't know if we will get our annual grudge match squeezed in this year, but if not, we'll get at it next year. Well, welcome. If you haven't joined us, thanks for finding us on the YouTube channel. If you've been with us before, you know the drill. This is Bluejay Banter, and we cover Creighton athletics. Obviously, very men's basketball centric. We have two fabulous sponsors: Equitable Bank. We take banking personally, and the West Pacific Dental Group. Both sponsors have signed on for the entire year, so we're very excited about that. So please, one of the things you can do to help us is support them. Dr. Robert Hogan's a great person and a big Jays fan and a terrific dentist. Doug Nodgard, president of Equitable Bank, another huge Jays fan. Just blowing up over there now, have two locations in Omaha. So check both those great businesses out. By the way, speaking of which, so you're looking at us right now, go down below, hit subscribe and like. That really helps us out, and you can really support us by hitting the subscribe and like button. So please do that. Tonight we're gonna empty. You know how you're at work and you have all those sticky notes everywhere. We're collecting all the sticky notes and we're going through them one by one. We've got tons of topics to discuss. Including the Christmas game, the conference schedule. We had some breaking news today on the Big East suspension. We're going to talk about that, and we've got some inside info from some sources that'll we can add to that. Uh, Arthur Kaluma, is he injured or is he not injured? And then something that we did a while back, Ross, on BlueJayBanner.com. Every year we go through Max, the recruiting class that Max every year that Mac has had here at Creighton, and we kind of go and rank them. So we're not going to dig into the details. If you want to see it, go to bluejaybanner.com. If you're not a member, sign up today, and you can see this fabulous. It's a long article, and it's really eye opening. And Ross and I'll discuss that later about all the things that you notice when you go through this process about how these classes affect how things are happening years down the road. First thing, Ross, I want to say, because you were not here last time when we did the show, the Bird Club Madness. Did you hear about that?
You know what? I didn't hear a ton about it from. I didn't really know a ton of people that went. I saw a couple of updates on Twitter, but that's really about
Yeah.
it. How was it?
Well, they had a big crowd. It was packed. They had the 3-point contest, the dunk contest, and then they had like a scrimmage. But the scrimmage was just,
Yeah,
one end guys doing a windmill slam, the other end guys jacking up a 30-foot three, and
uh-huh.
back and forth.
That's
So,
how it goes.
and Max sitting there the whole time, just fingers crossed, going, please don't get hurt. And I told him after the game, I go, yeah, there was a point there I just wanted Colt to just stand out at the center circle. Just don't move for the next 3 minutes. Just stand right there. Don't move. Don't twist an ankle. Don't do anything. But you remember the show before that? We're watching video of Kalk, and they were showing a lot of 3-pointers he had made. And I misspoke. I said he's a great shooter. What I meant was he had a great stroke. Okay. And so they did the 3-point contest, and then John Fanta goes, "Oh, we have a late arrival, a late addition, Ryan Kalkbrenner." I thought, okay, here we go.
Hmm.
Kalk went out and did not have he was just laughing out there, man. He was just missing everything. So I'm like, oh my God, Ross was here to see this. But yeah, I mean,
I
but
hope he
even as
doesn't
he
miss
was,
during the year. That's fine. He can miss at the Bird Club deal. I don't care.
yeah,
As long as you leave him open and he's ready to splash him during the year, I'm cool.
Yep.
he
Keep
was,
just keep them honest.
yeah,
Yeah.
he was, even missing though, man, he's got a really nice stroke. That's what I kept saying. But at any rate, just to fill you in a little bit on that, if you missed it, didn't see our last show, I'll fill Ross in a little bit. I mean, People ask me, well, who was the most impressive? I mean, it was kind of hard to tell because, like I said, they're going in for dunks. Zach and I both saw Ryan Nemhart. Kaluma was judging because Kaluma had a little banged up knee, and we'll talk about later. But he had Kaluma come out of the judging chair, throw the ball off the very side of the backboard.
Yep.
Threw it off the side of the backboard, went up and grabbed it, and two-hand slammed it.
Ryan Nemhart's, he's kind of sneaky.
He's got some ups,
Yeah.
man. That was real. That was like, wow, that was eye-opening. That was like, it was really impressive.
That dunk at the Paul that he had in transition. That guy tried to jump with him. I think he's got a little bit more of an understated point guard game, but he can go a little bit. He can jump a bit higher. He's a little bit quicker than people might give him credit for.
This dunk was more impressive than the Paul. I was just like, whoa, because like we were talking, guys can, they're 6'2" and above, can get up there and one hand slam it, but two hands, you got to get, wow, that's pretty impressive. 3-point shooting contest with Farabello and Baylor Schreierman for the Tide. They had a shoot off. Farabello is really got a great stroke, Ross. Oh my God.
That's what I've heard. I mean, he's had a, I'm not sure what his career 3-point percentage at TCU is, but I know he had a couple of years over 40. So he's going to be a welcome addition off the bench, no doubt about it. Yeah,
suddenly, how we went into last year and we went through the first, 10 to a dozen games. We're like, man, we don't have any shooting. Yeah. We don't have to worry about that this year, man. Between Baylor, Farabello, and then obviously the way Arthur came on, and we've got, Miller in the mix, who's ranked like one of the top 3 shooters on the team right now. You got Christopoulos off the bench, and obviously Trey, so we're loaded with shooters. All right, let's get to our first topic. Let's talk about that conference schedule. Let's first talk about the Christmas game. What are your thoughts on the Christmas game, Ross?
Love it. I think it's awesome. I wish it were somebody other than DePaul, but that's all right. It's still I think it's gonna be rocking in there. People are, the older you get, the more you realize that kind of by Christmas Day afternoon, people are kind of ready to get out of the house and do something, and almost, I don't want to say this, but kind of familyed out at that point. I think it's gonna be a blast. I think people are gonna be jumping in there. It'll be a very fun deal right after NFL. I'm pumped, very pumped.
I'm gonna play that clip for my wife because I thought she'd be like, oh, okay, thinking about it. She's like, no way. I think this is horrible. Da da da. And I go, after we eat dinner, we don't do anything but lay on the couch and fall asleep. I mean, so why not just go to the game?
It is. I mean, Tim,
it's a good time. I think
3:30. I think.
Yeah. So if you're a person who has to meet relatives for dinner at night, some people do that. There's time to do that. If you're a noon dinner person, you got time to do that.
Yep.
I understand both sides of it. I'm there's people that are just vehemently upset about this. I understand that.
I haven't heard that.
Oh, I have. Yeah. You got to go on BluejayBanter.com on the message board. There's people that aren't happy about it.
Really?
Yeah. Right, Zach?
Yeah, that's true. Well, my whole thing with the Christmas Day game was you're competing with NFL and NBA. And I didn't realize, there were some people on the board who were saying that they didn't realize there were NBA games on Christmas Day. I'm like, yeah, it's one of the biggest NBA days of the year.
Kidding me? Who doesn't know that?
Yeah, so I was just kind of, they're competing with both of those things, but if it works out, it works out. And
I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think there'll still be numbers because I think a lot of people are just forced to watch NBA because it's the one thing on.
Yeah.
They're really not NBA people. And they'd much rather watch college. So,
and to your point, it is mostly people who are kind of familyed out. They're down in the basement watching the NBA games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah.
And I think I think people that are saying this too, I mean, to go back on, I'm going back and forth on each side of the fence on this one, but their lens is so small. Here's what I think, okay, you're somebody in Oklahoma, okay? You're over at the mom and dad's house. The whole house is full of people. You got the NFL game on Fox on, right? The game's over. Nobody turns the channel. They just leave it because they're talking. You're kind of watching the game, but everybody's talking. Creighton comes on, and if we have the season we think we are, people will be like, oh, this is Creighton. I've been wanting to see them. Wow, they're ranked 5th in the country or whatever. Wow, let's watch it. You're going to get a lot of people that you normally wouldn't watch a Creighton game to watch a Creighton game.
Knock on wood that we're ranked 5th in the country.
Well, even if we're not, you're still going to get a lot of people that normally aren't watching a Creighton game to watch a Creighton game. So that's only a plus.
Here's the best part of this. The 25th, Christmas is on a Sunday this year.
Yeah.
That means that folks like us that work in the financial services industry, the market is closed on the 26th. That doesn't elicit anything from you?
I understand it. It's a holiday.
I don't know. Don't you think that's great?
Well, yeah, it's great, but I mean, I think, but it's Christmas though. Like usually the downtown's pretty vibrant. Like I just wonder how many businesses down there are going to be open.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess that could be an issue.
I feel like a decent amount of bars come open again on Christmas night.
Yeah, there are. I know DJs used to have like a special deal on.
Yeah, I used to go to that at the ones out west in my youth. It was a little bit of a cluster.
So anyway, so Against DePaul was rumored to be Marquette, but Marquette didn't want to come up here on Christmas. So, and I know people have all said, well, it's unfair to the kids. The kids have to. What people don't realize, and Ross, when you're playing, you'd understand this. Like obviously you didn't have to travel home because you're in Omaha, but
right,
a lot of years the players are coming home on Christmas morning. They're coming back to campus on Christmas morning.
Oh my God, it was terrible. I would so much rather play a game, stay there for a few days. So what they're doing is they're staying in town, obviously practicing on the 23rd and the 24th and playing the game. And then they're going home for a few days before they come back. I would have so much rather done that. And every single person I played with would have so much rather done that than what we did, which was go home on basically the night of the 22nd, be there for the 23rd, the 24th, and come back for practice on Christmas night.
Yeah, because you usually had a game like the 27th or something.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a much better deal for the players. That's the least of my worries. It's way better for the players.
They don't play till the 3rd. They play Seton Hall on January 3rd after that. So they're going to go home for a few days, hang out, probably come back right before, maybe on like the 30th or 31st, and get a few days of prep in and practice and get their legs under them. And they got another home game against Seton Hall.
What are your other thoughts on the schedule? Conference schedule.
So beyond pumped for Villanova Saturday night game. I don't think we've had one of those
not Villanova.
Long time.
We had the COVID year. We had it was late Saturday afternoon. I want to say it was like a 3:30.
Yeah, it doesn't really count on the COVID year.
Yeah.
They've been here on Saturday a couple of times, but it was like a 1 p.m. start or like a noon start. This is, I mean, I don't know about you. I'd have to go back and look, but this is the first time I can ever remember them being here on a Saturday night.
Yeah. I mean, I like the fact, we start off, we have a road game, and then we have 2 home games, and then a break. And so,
that was the thing that jumped out to me was the Villanova night game. I think, obviously that we've been in the league almost a decade now. That's the game that the crowd shows out for the most. That's the game that typically gets the loudest, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, Tim, we got a nice stretch of Saturday home games. We play Villanova and UConn on Saturdays back to back at home.
And both those games are on Big Fox too.
Tim, I take that. We have 3 back-to-back Saturday home games that start with Xavier on January 28th, Villanova on February 4th, and UConn on February 11th. That's a heck of a 3-game home Saturday stretch for Jays fans.
And being on Big Fox is huge.
Yep.
So I think actually I'm more looking at that UConn game. UConn's going to be a team that's going to be right there this year. So I just don't know about Villanova. I really don't.
Yeah, I think they've got some guys, and it'll depend on. God, why am I blanking on his name? He's like their best player by a mile.
Justin Moore.
Yeah, Justin Moore. Why I was going to say Justin Lewis, but then I was like, well, he's.
I've done that too.
It's Marquette.
Justin Moore. It's going to depend on his health. Obviously, I think he's scheduled to miss maybe the first month and a half of the season, roughly. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what they're like, and if he's back and he's healthy, and if they're clicking at that time. Who
Hey,
knows?
thanks for joining us. You stumbled on the Bluejay Banter podcast, talking Creighton athletics. Right now, we're talking basketball with former J. Ross Ferrarini. Yeah, the schedule. So, who knows right now, right? You can't really project what's going to happen at the end of February. You don't know how good or bad those teams are going to be. I'll tell you this, though. We better have a big crowd. That's the other thing for the Christmas game. My final point on that is just like some other holiday games, people got upset when we had some real stinker games around the holidays. There's people that are in town that never get to go to a Jays game that now can go to a Jays game. So
Right.
that's kind of cool. But there better be a rowdy crowd there because the Paul team, I think, is going to be improved again over last year. Not going to be win the conference title or anything, but they're not going to be an easy out. So,
Tim, by the way, speaking of Villanova, I'm looking at this roster. Even if they start the season without Justin Moore, this team's gonna be good. I mean, they got Brandon Slater back, they got Caleb Daniels back, they got Eric Dixon back, and then they have two absolute stud recruits in Cam Whitmore and Mark Armstrong coming into the fold. They're gonna be good.
no Jay Wright, Ross. No Jay Wright.
No Jay Wright, but you know what? Kyle Neptunes, he was a Nova guy. He's won big as an assistant under Jay Wright. He took a Fordham program that has been horrible. In his first year, they were actually 500. They were competitive. You're right. I mean, he's got a tall task ahead of him, and he's got huge, massive shoes to fill. But I don't know. I don't see any way how they're not top 3 in the league this year. That's my prediction.
We shall see. And yeah, we'll be doing our predictions here and show coming up. By the way, our big kickoff next week, early next week, it'll be Monday, Tuesday. That'll be our kickoff, our official kickoff of Bluejay Banter podcast. So be looking for that. We'll be all over Twitter. So follow us on Twitter at Bluejay Banter. We'll be all over our Facebook page as well. So check all that out and join us live. We'll let you know the exact time and date, and we're really excited about it. We're also excited about our sponsors, Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. They do answer the phone on the first ring. I can attest to that. Equitable Bank is the bank of Bluejay Banter, and they've done a tremendous job for us, and they will do a tremendous job for you. So check them out today. Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. Let's move on to Arthur Kaluma. Now, there was like I said, at the Bird Club Madness, he just had jeans on in his jersey, signed tons of autographs, didn't play because of a knee. Practice kicked off this week. We had some reports that Arthur was out there fully dressed, and then he went off to the side and did some work with one of the coaches. Those tweets got taken down. Everybody thought it was a big deal, and it was simply somebody was live tweeting. He shall remain nameless, but he was live tweeting during the practice, and it's kind of frowned on. So that's why the tweets were taken down. Not that there was anything to do with the injury, but I don't think everybody's told me this is nothing serious. So I think it's just being precautionary at this point. He kind of had a bum knee last year, did he not?
He did, briefly. Missed a couple of games even.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, that was the first time Trey stepped into the starting lineup, yeah?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. So we'll just have to see. But by the way, I'd like to kind of piggyback on that. So today we can actually announce that Bluejay Banter sponsored a player and then as part of an NIL agreement last year, and we did it again this year. And this year, Ben Schultzberg is our player.
Oh, great.
So Ben's going to be giving us reports, practice reports on BluejayBanter.com. We'll be having some Q&As on there with him. He'll be doing some Zoom calls with all of our members as well. And obviously, we'll have him on the Bluejay Banter podcast as well. So we're really excited about that. Ben's really excited about it, too, which is really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard whispers that Ben is awfully talented offensively. So be interesting.
Yes, he is. He's big. I mean, he's big. He's 6'5". He's a big kid. I would say at Bird Club Madness, he was in the three-point shooting contest, started really slow. I mean, he missed a lot, but then he came on like the last 2.5 racks. He hit a lot of balls. But during the scrimmage, he came down. Nemhard came down, did a stop and a pullback three. It was just a thing of beauty. Next time down, Ben does the exact same thing. Swish, man. It was pretty sweet. Just an awesome move. So, and he likes it. You can tell he likes to take it to the hole too,
We'll
because
just
he's got some size.
it'll be interesting to see. I mean, there's just not a lot of minutes there for him at just kind of first glance at the roster and the guys. So it'll be interesting to see what type of run he gets, particularly in the non-conference.
Especially those first 4 games, because there should be plenty of playing time for everybody in those first 4 games.
Yeah.
So they're going to really have to show that they can, contribute. They can play with the other 5 guys. They can play with different combinations, because Mac's going to mix everybody up to see how these guys do. And I'm sure he'll try and put them in some pressure situations, some pressure defensive situations as well, to see what they can really do. And that'll be probably the most interesting part of those first 4 games, is to watch all of that develop and see, what do we have in some of these guys. And of course, with freshmen, they hit that wall in February, when normally their high school seasons are done, and yet the college season is still cranking up and a long way to go. All right, we did something interesting about 2 weeks ago. So this is something we've done every year on BluejayBanter.com. And like I said, if you're not a member, go sign up today so you can see this. We go back and we rank all of Mac's recruiting classes. Now the rankings obviously change. Players that are freshmen this year, the ranking will be X this year. It'll change obviously next year depending on how they do, and on and on and on and on. So Ross, myself, and our recruiting coordinator Jeremy Hauer got together, and we'd because of COVID, we'd missed a couple of years, so we went back, re-ranked a bunch of players and so forth. Ross, I just wonder what you thought of the experience, and what you kind of like. Was there anything that jumped out at you?
No, I thought it was kind of fun going back and looking at some of the guys, and so then you kind of reminisce on some of their careers. I mean, speaking of, I'm looking at the kind of season recap of stats. The 50-page deal that Rob puts out at the end of the year, and so I'm scrolling all the way down here. I'm at the single game records. I mean, you got some random names in here of guys, I mean, that we talked about on this deal. I mean, Isaiah Zierden hit 8 threes at DePaul, in January 2016. And, it's just kind of funny. Then you kind of think back, like, oh, wow, so-and-so did have some of these big games. And, there were a couple of guys there that I sort of forgot about. I think Malik Albert was one that I was like,
Oh,
wait,
yeah.
who the hell is Malik Albert? But then it kind of clicked for me for a second.
Yeah.
Was here for a cup of coffee, but yeah, no, that was a fun exercise.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too that you go back, and Zierden would be one probably of the 10 guys over the last 10 years hard to score, because our scoring was a 3 was a consistent contributor, started some games,
Yep.
maybe got some sort of conference notoriety, but not 4 where you got all conference. 5 is like,
Right.
you're drafted in the first round of the NBA, you're all conference, everybody
Yep.
knows you're great,
Yep.
type thing.
Yep.
Doug McDermott, he's a 5.
Yep.
And so a guy like Zierden, was he a 2.5? Was he a 3? Was he a 3.5? It's just it's really hard with some of those guys to put a number on it, especially we probably, if people go on and look at the ranking from this class last year, we were really conservative on the rankings because we're like, they've only played 1 year. Yes, some of these guys started. Yes, some got 3.5s, but we didn't feel we could go 4s or 5s with them yet because they haven't, even though they made all freshman team, they haven't made all conference teams.
Right.
Unlike, say, Ryan Hawkins, who was here 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's easy to put him at a 4 because of what he did.
Based on the what the Creighton fan base thinks of those guys, they're already 5s in their mind.
Yeah, right. I think if the fan base looked at that, they'd be like, "Oh my God, what's wrong with you guys?"
We got to remember that we still have the season to play. So, but no, it's funny, kind of looking back. You look back at these single game records and some of these. And this goes through everybody that played for the program and points they scored in the whole 9 yards. I mean, I kind of forgot about Mitch's game against DePaul where he hit 11 threes and he had 39 points. This thing's kind of fun to look at for sometimes. Ryan Hawkins I just kind of gave it away. But Ryan Hawkins holds the record for most 3-point field goal attempts in a game at Creighton. I wouldn't have guessed.
Really? I would
Yes,
not have guessed that.
at Georgetown, February this past year.
Huh.
What was it, 19?
18.
18.
Oh.
Good guess.
Well, you mentioned Mitch, but there's two guys too, Mitch and Tyshawn. Tyshawn left the year before Mitch.
Yeah.
Tyshawn, very strong with the NBA, got a cup of coffee in the NBA. Mitch stayed 4 years, not going to be an NBA guy. It was hard, are we going to score them the same because Mitch had a lot of value in the locker room. It was
Right.
just, you take all these factors into play. The other interesting thing I think is when you look back at the classes, like 4 of the last 6 are max best classes. Okay.
Yep.
But you wonder, when I go way back to the class with Marcus Foster in it, okay, that class never won an NCAA game. And you wonder, well, how could that possibly be? It was a great class. Maybe these guys weren't as good. Then you looked at the 2 classes around them, 2 of the poorer ones that Creighton has had since we've gone to the Big East. And that kind of tells the story. When it's all going on and all playing out, you're not thinking about that. But when you look back on it like 5 years later, you're like, wow, okay, I can see what happened there. We didn't have the depth when we had some injuries. We had to play some guys who maybe weren't ready. It's not like this year where we've got
and around those 2 players, you really, you think back, you didn't have a ton of continuity because you had guys, there was always an injury, or, then there was, Maurice gets hurt, and then he has his whole deal where he gets in trouble. Then you have Martine gets hurt. Jacob Epperson comes into the fold. Yeah, they have to burn his red shirt. He gets hurt. I mean, they just had so many. They had good players, but it was just such an odd mishmash at all times of like the roster, and there never seemed to be any fluidity with the roster and minutes and health and the whole 9 yards. You know what I'm saying? So now, having said that, I think that the team that they put on the floor for that first round game against Kansas State that they lost and played very poorly in, I think that they completely laid an egg. I thought that team was a lot better than that result showed. And then, of course, they would have played UMBC in the second round.
That was the biggest heartbreaker.
Yeah.
That would have been our first 16. And then there again, we finally reached the Sweet 16. You go back recruiting. Well, that was Mitch and Tyshawn's class. That was an excellent class.
Yep.
So there again, that just shows, when you get the good recruiting classes, hey, and the way we've developed players over the years, and then you top that with good recruiting classes, that's gonna result in some really good finishes in the NCAA tournament and so forth. One of our other sponsors is West Pacific Dental Group, Dr. Robert Hogan. He's my dentist, does a great job. Go to him for all your dental needs. West Pacific Dental Group. They will treat you fabulously. They look out for your full health care besides your dental needs. They take everything in consideration and come up with a plan that will best suit you. And they work around your schedule, which is awesome. I know one day I had something wrong with my tooth, and Dr. Hogan came in on his day off, took care of me. I mean, he's just a fabulous, fabulous guy and a big, big Jay supporter. So go check him out, West Pacific Dental Group. Okay, let's move on. We had some big news today out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Zach Fremantle, one of the key pieces to that Xavier team, has been suspended indefinitely by Coach Sean Miller.
Did they just say violation of team rules? Was that it?
Did not really even say anything. They just said he's suspended indefinitely. They said no reason was given. I have checked with several sources. Sources tell me that they don't know exactly what it is, but what it was a lot of little things that added up. A brick and a brick and a brick, and pretty soon you got a wall, right? And that's when you have to step in and go, okay. I think it's interesting that Sean Miller, versus Travis Steele, and who knows if these things were going on and Travis Steele was there, who knows? But that Sean Miller, who's looked upon of like not having discipline, right, not having control of his program, is the one who steps in and says, no, you're suspended indefinitely. Now, that could be number one, that it was just something that needed to be done. Number two, it could be that Sean Miller is saying, you know what, I probably let some things go in my past that I shouldn't have. I'm going to really
Right the ship.
these things buttoned up right from the get-go.
Mm.
I'm hearing, I asked one source, like, how long do you think this will be? The best case scenario I was given was they don't know. They really don't know. But they said a lot of it's on Zach's plate to clean up the things that Coach Miller's upset about. So,
that's depending on, now he suspends him indefinitely in September. So,
yeah.
could he be back? And my guess is he'll probably be back by their first big non-conference game, if I had to guess. But if for some reason he isn't, or issues linger, that's huge for them, because he's one of the better players in our league on a team that's awfully talented,
Yeah.
and that frankly could obviously our program is getting a lot of preseason hype, but that's a program and that's a team that could certainly challenge us at the top of the standings, along with Villanova and UConn.
Yeah. Zach Fremantle is an preseason all first team Big East player, and for him to be indefinitely suspended before the day that practice starts, that's a big hit. Depending on when he comes back, obviously, but.
Yeah, it should be pointed out. He's suspended from all team activity, so he can't practice either.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure he's like, damn, can't go through those grueling first week of practice. Darn. But here's the thing to watch for. I think we got to watch this closely over the next couple of weeks. If Zach's kind of on board, so to speak, with this, I'm sure he's not happy about it. But if he's on board with what happened and what he's got to do to fix things, then everything will be fine, so forth. But if he's not, and there's some friction between him and Coach Miller, look for the next couple weeks to hear that Zach Fremantle's going in the transfer portal.
Yeah. I mean, God, I can't imagine that would happen, but I guess you never know anymore. I mean,
I've seen it before. We've seen it now since this transfer portal. Guys get into a spat with the coach and they just go, screw it, I'm out of here.
Now, I mean, their first games, I'm looking at their schedule. I mean, they have an exhibition, obviously, first, and then they play Morgan State, Montana, and Fairfield before they play Indiana and the Gavitt games. So,
wow, what a big game that is.
Yeah, that's gonna be a great game.
Is that in Bloomington?
No, that's in Cincinnati.
Ooh,
it's on
really?
Friday night.
Oh, circle that one. That's appointment TV right there.
Yeah. So, and then they go from there to the Phil Knight tournament out in Portland. They play
Florida. Oh, that's a big tournament.
Florida right off the bat. So, wow. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? The suspended indefinitely thing is so arbitrary, but if, hypothetically speaking, you could just suspend him for these first 3 games against kind of low mid majors and get him back for Indiana.
Yeah. I want to see how this next month's going to be interesting. We'll see how it plays out. He could very well get reinstated shortly before, and they could kind of just slowly work him in and get him ready for Indiana. And maybe that's Sean Miller's plan here. It'll be interesting to see. I see Rothstein, tweeting out. The opening of season is like 40 days away. It's crazy.
Close.
It is crazy. Close.
Very, very
Our first
close.
exhibition game is what, October 30th?
I think so. Yep.
So that's just as we do the show on the 27th. So that's 33 days. Wow. Time
crazy.
Time whipping by. It's coming up fast.
We've got NBA preseason next week.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, hockey's well into their preseason.
Yeah, they were preseason. I was getting the alerts for the Avalanche games this past weekend.
Avalanche, by the way, did totally shift gears. Avalanche doing the old baseball split squat thing. What is up?
Yeah, I did. I saw that too. Yeah, they had like the back-to-back games.
Half the team in Minnesota and half the team stayed home and played Denver or somebody, or not Denver. They played somebody at home, San Jose or somebody.
I'm trying to remember
somebody
who
in that
it was.
western region. Maybe it's Phoenix. I don't know, but and everybody's like, "What is this a thing?" And like, no, nobody'd ever heard of it before. Like, because for hockey, you have quite a few players. Like it's not like baseball. You can bring up your double A and triple A, and you got plenty of guys to split up. Hockey's kind of different. You get a couple injuries, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, kind of strange. All right, I think we've cleaned up the desk.
So Tim, I'm sure as you've seen, Jeff Goodman and Douster and all these kind of all these other very good college basketball writers, the 3-man weave guys, etc. They came out with this massive season preview that they called the Almanac. It is 814 pages. It's $20. I purchased it. I just downloaded it, and I'm going to dive into it before bed tonight. I'm very excited.
Yes. Look for Lucas Harkins.
Yes.
Good buddy of mine. He's writing for us.
He's a part of it.
Yeah, he's the beat writer, or one of the beat writers for not the beat writers, but he follows Butler, so in the Big East, so he's a Big East brethren, so to speak. So happy for Lucas.
I remember the beginning of last year because of the transfer portal and so many new guys, and we have segments on betting. It was very hard to handicap games for the first couple of weeks of the year last year. I specifically remember reading up on teams, reading previews, et cetera, and it's kind of a crapshoot the first couple of weeks as teams are getting comfortable with transfers and whatnot. It really is.
Okay, now that you have this book, do you think too much information might not be a good thing either?
Yeah, I agree. Now, having said that, I'm not going to read it front to back.
Cover to cover. I want it done by next Friday. Yeah, cover to cover. I want a report on my desk on Monday morning.
20-page book report.
Yeah, I'm not doing a deep dive on the MEAC teams, but but yeah, it should be interesting to see what they got. And quite honestly, there's so many kids that transfer now. You almost kind of forget about such and such player that transferred, and then so you look through a lot of these rosters and you're like, you're like that kid's at Belmont. Like I remember him at,
like
at Utah or whatever.
I can see people around the country when they flip on the Maui Classic going, wait a minute, is that headband kid that was at South Dakota State that I saw in the NCAA tournament? He's at Creighton.
Imani Bates is at Eastern Michigan now, I think.
Yeah, I saw he got in trouble.
And then this past week he got in trouble. I didn't even realize that he had transferred. And then I saw that he did transfer, and then when I searched his name up, it was him getting in trouble. Right. Yeah, it's a lot of those high-profile guys who maybe it doesn't go their way the first couple years, and then all of a sudden they're at a smaller school putting up 20 points a game. So
yeah, it's interesting. So those first couple weeks of the season are always interesting in that regard.
Yeah. The most shocking thing for me last season was that a Hauser was still playing college basketball.
I didn't realize a lot of that with the COVID year. I cannot believe that. How is that guy still playing college basketball?
Yeah, I mean we had our own version of that with Grant Gibbs, and there wasn't even a COVID year.
Yeah,
I always think back though, and every time I hear about Hauser, I always think, man, if Marquette could have kept them.
Yeah,
I know, crazy.
I was just thinking about the 0.8 seconds.
I know it. One quick thing we were talking about recruiting a minute ago. And I know, Ross, you and I have talked about this, that, Minnesota, when they hired Ben Johnson, he was an alumni. He's from Minnesota. Yep. Excellent recruiter at Xavier. He was brought in to close the borders, okay, because there's so many good players in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. He's already lost 2. He lost 1 to Wisconsin just this last week, which was a big shock. A recruit. Oh. And everybody thought, he's like I think a 5-star. Everybody thought he was going to go to Minnesota, and he ended up signing with Wisconsin, which is that's the worst thing that can happen. He goes across the border to another Big Ten school. No, I mean, it's just
Wisconsin's always killed it in Minnesota, though. They have always
and so he's lost. They said now he's lost 2, and they said, man, I was talking with one of the Creighton coaches too, and that name came up because Jackson McAndrew was here for Bird Club Madness, big-time shooter out of Wayzata, Minnesota. And I mentioned to one of the coaches about, isn't Ben Johnson there? And he said, he's going to have a really tough time keeping anybody in Minnesota right now. just that program's dropped so much that
Yeah.
he's running. Other schools have made inroads. You know,
Mhm.
another guy that recruits Minnesota on a mid-major level, Ben Jacobson out of UNI, he recruits
Mhm.
Minnesota very heavily
Yep.
and pulls in his fair share of players there as well. So, yeah, it's going to be tough. All right, well, that's our show for tonight. Thank you very much. We're going to have a big guest as we officially kick off our Bluejay Banter podcast next week. Follow us on Twitter at Bluejay Banter. Follow us on Facebook, Bluejay Banter. We'll let you know exactly the date and time of the big show. Ross, are you going to dress up for the occasion? You going to wear a suit and tie or?
We'll see. Maybe I'll surprise you.
Okay. I'm
Draft
going to be
draft
anxious
night
to,
outfits.
Yep. Yep.
I'm going to be anxious to see that, Ross.
All right.
All right, guys.
All right.
Have a great week. Creighton volleyball, by the way, I want to throw this in. Creighton volleyball midweek games, conference games, kind of a little unusual. Wednesday and Friday at Sokol. So go check them out. Number 21 in the nation. Going to roll through the Big East like they always do. See you next week.
All right.
See ya.